I'm focused on the Illinois side of this Illinois-Indiana matchup. Currently a 6-point spread by the odds makers right now. And we got a big topic we got to talk about if Illinois starting quarterback is going to be there. But it's Joey Wagner. We got 6 questions to go over, Joey, and plenty to talk about here with Illinois. After a win at Minnesota, that comeback win gives them a real chance over these last 3 games. But this team hasn't won back-to-back games yet, Joey, so they still got a lot to prove to show they can get to a bowl.
Yeah, they haven't done it since that run last October. November last year, they didn't do it. Obviously, this year, we haven't seen that week-to-week winning consistency. We've seen consistent elements of their game week over week. Recently, it's been the running game. I mean, yeah, can they string 2 together? And I know we're going to get into it pretty quickly, but will they have their starting quarterback to try to do it? That's the biggest question going into the week.
Well, there it is. It is the biggest question going into the week. If Luke Altmyer can't go on Saturday, what's that mean for Illinois on Saturday?
John Paddock is going to get a chance to follow up what was a pretty magical final drive. So Luke Altmyer asked Brett Bielema today if he had practiced. He has not practiced. He's not been cleared. That doesn't sound good. Typically, you would like your players to practice going into a game. But I did say, look, he's your 9-game starter at quarterback. Is there a window where he could be cleared on Friday and go? And yes, there is a window for that. It's hard to project out, right? And they've still been pretty mum on what Luke Altmyer is dealing with. You can speculate.
We have to speculate because, we asked him. I asked him to specify so he wouldn't speculate. But given that he looked off after the game, given that he hasn't been cleared yet, he was at the Illinois basketball game on Monday. He did Derek Piper and Lante's radio show on Monday, but he's not been cleared to practice medically. He got his head, the back of the head hit. Like, it certainly seems very plausible and likely that he has been in concussion protocol, but we don't know that for sure because Brett Bielema has not specified it.
That's right. And there's a series of checklists, right? I feel like we've had this conversation a great number of times. There's a series of checklists he's going to have to go through to get cleared. And as of Thursday, he hadn't practiced a single they don't practice on Friday. They maybe do a walkthrough. So I don't know. That we'll see. It means John Paddock's going to get the start. And I'm wondering, Jeremy, and I know we can get into this. I know it'll be our next question. You should lean on the run game. The run game that has been good for you in the last few weeks. Caden Fagan, Reggie Love is expected to play. Do you lean on that and just try to make this as seamless as you possibly can for John Paddock, who has experience, but he's still a backup quarterback?
Yes. That the game against Minnesota was absolutely lightning in a bottle for John Paddock. It was legendary. He is not going to throw perfect. He's not going to throw for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. I would be shocked if that were the case. John Paddock is a backup for a reason. It took him 4 years to start at Ball State for a reason. That said, I think we've seen some things when he's come into games that is both concerning and encouraging. The number one thing is his consistency throwing the ball. Let's not forget some of the games he's come in, the first couple of passes have not looked very good. Then Minnesota completely changed it. But when he's gotten time and he's gotten into a rhythm, he gets the ball out incredibly quick. He makes pretty good reads quickly. He surveys the field really, really well. The things I question is, does he throw accurately, consistently over an entire game with a Big Ten defense bearing down on you? He's smaller than Luke Altmyer. One of my biggest concerns if Paddock plays this game for Illinois in general is the running aspect of Luke Altmyer. John Paddock is not an oak tree, as Rod Smith would say. Like, he can elude pressure, but he's more like Tommy DeVito, the runner. I think Luke Altmyer has proven he is one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the Big Ten with his legs. So that not having that element of a run game, it does concern me that they could load up on Caden Fagan, right? And that running attack, and that forces a quarterback to throw into tight windows. And I'm just a little concerned about that. That said, for anybody who wanted to see John Paddock start this game no matter what, you're going to get your opportunity. And I'm really interested to see how he plays over an entire game, because I think the expectation should be he manages the game, right? But I do think he's shown a fiery leadership that Luke Altmyer does not have. He gets the ball out probably quicker than Luke Altmyer, makes quicker decisions. He's just got more experience, at least a little bit at this point of the season, than Luke Altmyer, who's gaining quickly on him. Listen, I don't think it's a good thing that Luke Altmyer is out this game. He's one of their most dynamic weapons, but at least John Paddock has shown you when he has had to come in and especially last week, there's something there. This isn't just, a guy that's going to have to dink and dunk the entire game. I think Barry Lundy's going to have to be really good. His wide receivers are going to have to win some 50-50 balls. Caden Fagan's going to have to run the ball. But I think Paddock can give you a chance to win this game.
Yeah, I'm still going to go with if John Paddock starts this game until we see it on the injury report or Brett Bielema says otherwise. I do think it's clearly trending towards that direction, right? But I think to have John Paddock in, if that's 7 days after that, you could just kind of ride that wave.
Yeah.
Like just take it as far as it'll take you.
You should be
maybe that gets you. Yeah, maybe that gets you to halftime. Maybe not. Maybe it gets you to the fourth quarter. I don't know, but ride that in there. Right. That's what it comes down to. You've got this moment in your pocket. People believe in you. I think that's a really big thing. That is a really, really big thing. Jeremy, we've covered Illinois football teams that backup quarterbacks didn't really instill a great deal of belief. People believe in him. They follow him. They understand. Like, that's a good sign. Like, that's what we talked about on Saturday, right? You've got a capable backup who, if things come in, you don't feel like everything's on fire around you. Like, there's so much value to that, man. And to have that, if he's got to get thrust into a start this week, he's doing it confidently. They believe in him. Like,
yeah,
I don't think it's a rational confidence. I like that, like the concept of that, but it's semi-rational confidence.
Yeah, like there's some similarities. I know you didn't cover this team, but to 2014, when you had Wes Lunt, big-armed quarterback, top recruit, gets hurt, and Riley O'Toole comes in. And Riley's a really top-level recruit too. I think he was the News Gazette Player of the Year, senior year, put up huge numbers at Wheaton Warrenville South. But he came into the game, and he just gave him a spark. Like, he wasn't maybe as big-armed as Wes Lunt, maybe not as accurate, but he could run, unlike Wes Lunt. And the team just believed him. He gave him a fire, and that really showed. Now, I think Luke Altmyer's a more dynamic quarterback than Wes Lunt just because he can run, and he can do all those things. And John Paddock's not as big as Riley O'Toole, probably not quite as talented overall, but I do think it's a similar situation in that this is one of the better backup quarterbacks I think Illinois has had in a time, or capable backup quarterbacks it has. And as you said, like that performance Saturday, I think gained him a lot of confidence in himself, showed he can do that at this level, but maybe more importantly, gave his teammates a lot of confidence in him.
Yeah. Again, like, I don't know how long that wave's going to go. Yeah. And it might be a drive, right? And it might be see where it takes you. See where it takes you. But the reality is you're in a really important game to try to get to where you want to go. So you better hope it takes you a little bit.
Yeah. And you hope he takes care of the ball. Last year, Ball State, 18 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. All right. So he's got to take care of the ball, 60% completion rate around there. But this will be the injury report. Big Ten mandated injury report we'll be paying attention to more than any, I believe, this season.
Yeah. Can we just circle back really quickly, Jeremy? It was a big deal when they landed John Paddock and they were able to kind of thread the needle of going and getting a starter and getting an experienced backup as a walk-on. Man, that is paying off big. Do it.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to do.
What I tell you when I went to the elevator, like, I just felt like the only quote that was in my mind, glad I called that guy.
100% right.
Backup quarterback was a huge concern of mine. It's not that I don't think Donovan Leary can eventually be that guy or eventually turn into an impact quarterback. It's just he's a redshirt freshman who hadn't played, barely snapped in the offense last year because he was on the scout team. So to be able to get a guy's preferred walk-on like John Paddock with Division I FBS starting experience. I mean, he started at Ohio State with Ball State.
I think Tennessee, I want to say, was another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tennessee is definitely one. Maybe it wasn't Ohio State, but he's played in some of these atmospheres, and to do what he did against Minnesota certainly gives you some confidence. Another injury thing, but on the positive, Reggie Love sounds good to go on Saturday. Brett Bielema told you guys today on Thursday. How can his return impact the Illini offense, Joey?
Well, I still expect Caden Fagan, Brett Bielema said as much today, to be that lead running back. Reggie Love just hasn't played much in the last 5 or 6 weeks. He had that one game where he came back after the Purdue game, but that was Nebraska. But he just hasn't had consistent reps. So no one should think he's going to come in and DC Caden Fagan for where he's at. But to be able to give Caden, like, man, dude, that Minnesota game, they were walking a tightrope at running back. I wrote about it, how they got their 2 walk-on defensive backs ready behind Nick Fidonzo. This takes you can breathe a little bit more with Reggie Love back on Saturday. And just to give Caden Fagan some breathers to add a different element. Reggie Love is a very steady running back. So I just think that those two will complement each other in an important way. And I think that'll help if Illinois is to its backup quarterback too.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's going to be fully this way this week because Reggie, is he 100%? Is he, Bielema said he's probably going to be on a pitch count of some means. That's easier to do when you got Caden Fagan. But finally, you might have the running back duo that you want and that you have a big physical bruiser that was supposed to be Josh McCray, but Caden Fagan has been one of the best Big Ten running backs the last couple of weeks. And then Reggie Love in that do everything, consistent, steady, kind of change of pace back. I think he's perfectly built for a number 2 role. And I think he's going to be fine doing that because he knew he was going to play that role anyway. But I think he's a really consistent player that can really help Illinois. And if he can make those cuts that we know he can, I think it's going to be nice to get Caden Fagan a breather, as you said, but also Reggie Love's the best blocking running back. And I know that's not sexy to anybody, but when you got play action and Indiana's bearing down, run blitzing, and you got to pick up that one extra guy, like I trust Reggie Love to do it more than anybody, and that might give John Paddock the opportunity, or Luke Altmyer if he plays, the opportunity to hit that deep shot. So those little things that you can just count on Reggie Love for, I think can be incredibly important because Caden Fagan has certainly improved as a blocker as the season has gone along, but Reggie Love is really good at it.
Yeah, and you say you can't have too many running backs. You don't have enough, right? So to get him back and somebody who's just been in these kind of like Caden Fagan to this point's got some under his belt, but to be in these kind of games and when it matters, it really matters down the stretch to try to get in there.
Well, and if Caden Fagan got hurt, you'd be turning to Nick Fidanzo. I mean, it seemed like Illinois was ready to do that if they had to, but Reggie Love, at least I know, has been in those situations.
Yeah, it gives you so much more breathing room. Like that's the biggest thing, regardless of if Reggie, we don't know what the carry. Maybe he gets 5 carries, maybe he gets 10. I don't know. But just to not feel like kind of walking on eggshells a little bit, hoping, Caden Fagan doesn't go down or get hurt or anything along those lines. Just calling it an insurance policy feels like a disservice to Reggie Love because he's a steady number 2 running back in the Big Ten, but it does add insurance to your running back room.
You've heard us talk about home field apparel since the start of the season. There are a lot of collegiate apparel brands out there, but we wanted to partner with Home Field because their designs are the best out there. Some of Illini Inquirer's favorites are the basketball ringer tee, the rose tee, and the 1980s long sleeve with the script Illini. It's great. Be sure to check out homefieldapparel.com, filter by Illinois, and see what we're talking about. And our listeners get an exclusive deal using code Illini23. Using that code Illini23 gets you 15% off your first order. We all know you're wearing Illini gear, so if you're in need of a refresh, we really think that you should check out Home Field Apparel, which has the best designs, and these shirts, guys, are really comfortable. Their designs are super unique, and a lot of thought goes into each concept. There's really nothing else on the market like what Home Field is doing. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com and use code Illini23 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. All right, question number 3. What is an under the radar storyline with this team during the last few weeks? So just something that, we've been talking about that maybe we haven't written too in depth, or maybe we did this week, Joey.
Johnny Newton.
He's an answer for me coming up, but anything you want to hit on underrated storyline right now?
It's a good question. I was at Moe's when you sent me this.
I will give mine, and I'm writing.
Yeah, I have a couple, but go for it.
I'm writing about it later today. It's the wide receiver rotation. The wide receiver rotation has gotten very small. Ashton Holland's got like 5 snaps against Minnesota. Hank Beatty got a couple. Sean Miller has barely played. Obviously, Malik Elzy has barely played. You see every once in a while Keon Battle get in the game. But they are riding their top 3 guys. Casey Washington barely comes off the field. Isaiah Williams, of course, barely comes off the field. And Pat Bryant plays a ton of reps. And I asked George McDonald. I said, you were there with me talking to George McDonald about the receiver rotation. He said, listen, we're just doing what we need to win games, basically the point. And those guys do not want to come off the field. And it's obvious. We know what the answer was, but to hear it from George, they trust those guys. Casey Washington has earned the trust that he's going to run the right route, that he's going to make the right block. Pat Bryant has been a little inconsistent with his hands, but he's going to run the right route. He's going to make that block. And obviously you're not going to take Isaiah Williams off the field that much. So I get it. Every Illini fan that is concerned of Malik Elzy, we need to play him. What's going to happen in the offseason? I asked George specifically about Malik. How has he handled that? And, George, at least to us on the record, we're saying Malik has handled it really well. He understands his time is coming and he's going to get his opportunity to be a great player. But right now we want to win games, and these guys give us the best chance to win games. So none of that was a shock of what he said. Malik, what he said about Malik was encouraging, as if that truly is the case. So we'll see where it goes from here. But we thought the receiver rotation would be a little bit deeper, but they're just riding with those veterans.
Yeah, that was a position we thought had really improved its depth, and it has to a degree improved its depth. But I thought talent for sure. We thought maybe that would show up a little bit more in terms of depth is the best way to put it this year. And early on, they were feeling their way around what they had a little bit. But yeah, it's probably been the last 3 or so games you've really noticed. Maybe Maryland is the one that comes to mind for me. Yeah. That's like, wow, they're going with 3 and seeing what can happen. And look, they need it, right? Like there's big picture program implications for getting to a bowl game again. There's momentum to be salvaged, rebuilt really with this team. And they feel like those are the 3 guys to do it. So it was interesting to hear it on the record like that, because we'd been speculating. People had fairly asked, because not a lot of 4-stars coming through Champaign, and you get one and you're not seeing him, in particular with Malik Elzy. It was good to get an answer from George on that. Yeah,
let me give you the full answer. He said the possessions are so critical. Those guys have banked a lot of football. They've all made huge plays to win the game. True. Casey Washington with 2 of them. Obviously, Isaiah Williams with some of them. Pat Bryant scored some touchdowns. George goes on to say, just where we are as an offense, just trying to make sure that we get those guys out there. To be honest with you, those guys don't want to come off the field. They're not tired. Casey's made it known. Isaiah, they want to play and milk every opportunity that they have to make an impact on the game. It's kind of just morphed during the ebb and flow of the game of what we need and what type of situations we're in. Listen, I think if Illinois was up 3 touchdowns against Indiana, you might see some of these, but that's not the way the Big Ten is going. Like, development sure can happen in games. It more often happens in games you're blowing somebody out or getting blown out in. Like, that's really when Malik came in the game early in the season, was when they were getting blown out. So they need to win these games. Like, throwing Malik Elzy in there and potentially having a drop or a missed route that leads to an interception. As coaches, man, like, that's a rarity. Like, you're not developing during games, you're developing during practice.
Yeah, and I'll also say, not in reference directly to Malik Elzy, but Brett Bielema had talked about, I think it was earlier this season, I don't remember which player in particular, but with freshmen, you want to make sure that you're putting them in there in a position where they're going to be able to have success and not have moments. Malik Elzy had 2 drops against whoever was after. Was that FAU?
Yeah.
He had 2 drops. But look, drops happen. We've seen drops, but you want to make sure like things don't spiral, right? So I think they're very cognizant about when they put guys out there and when they don't. I will go, Jeremy. There's been a change at cornerback number 2 on this team. And it's not been as in your face as shrinking down the receiver rotation, but Zach Toby has stepped into that that starting spot opposite of Taz Nicholson, and teams are going to attack him. Teams are going to attack him because he's a freshman, but he gives them a lot of length out there. We've seen that play out at various times this season. And to be honest, Tyler Strain had some struggles. I mean, it was an up and down experience for him out at that second cornerback spot. And obviously the Wisconsin play is one that a lot of people think of, understandably so. But Zach Toby has shown some stuff, Jeremy, in the snaps that he's gotten out there. So I think that's been an interesting, kind of an interesting subplot, because I don't know that we had him as the guy who would step into that.
I saw him in the spring, and I remember looking at you and going, Zach Toby's second string. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. And yes, he's just different. He's different than the guys that they have, and especially with Xavier Scott playing nickel. I thought that was interesting, so I made a note of it. And obviously, Sabor Kareem's come in and played on that dime package. He was on the field late. Sabor Kareem is in the game in that moment. So I think we haven't seen the secondary be a strength, really, overall, right? I do think Taz Nicholson has had a good year, though it's negated by some penalties. But Xavier Scott has had a really good year. But you're just not making the big plays, but I still like the future of that group. I think it's a really talented group. that just needs to get a little bit more experience. So this freshman class, I think, is going to be really good. Jaheim Clark making an impact on special teams too. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I think you could look next year and see a secondary potentially of Taz Nicholson, Xavier Scott, Zach Toby, Matthew Bailey back healthy. And Miles Scott will still be there, but Samor Kareem's interesting to me too. Like, is there going to be – what's the competition look like at free safety? So it's early years of that secondary that really paid dividends last year. I'm not saying there's 3 draft picks back there, but kind of that same get them out there early, going to be up and down. Xavier Scott last year, right? He had some very up and down moments last season coming in after that cornerback room got hit. So you're seeing it. You're seeing there's some talent back there. It's young. It's what we thought it was going to be. It's young talent trying to find their way through it, with the exception of Taz Nicholson, who's been pretty good, especially after he cut off those penalties.
All right, question number 4. Biggest reason for confidence against Indiana? Johnny Newton. That's it. I mean, his last 2 games, man, which has been 5 quarters, has been some of the best football I've ever seen from an interior defensive lineman. And the staff was just gushing about him, as they should. And I love that Aaron Henry was basically like, enjoy him while you can. Like, and it's true. You got 3 more games of Johnny Newton, because even if Illinois makes a bowl game, that guy's probably not playing in the bowl game. So get wound up about it now. Get that.
The only way he does is if they maybe the only way he might is if they maybe rematch with Toledo, and you might get the Newton Bowl again. But even then, some agent is going to say, I'm sure this would be fun for you, but enjoy your time watching with your family.
You got tens of millions of dollars guaranteed coming your way potentially. So let's not play that bowl game in Detroit. So unless the championship game is still in the mix, so I guess I should leave that open. We'll see what happens the next couple of weeks in the wild, wild west. But it's Johnny Newton in that defensive front that I think are coming on. Like Keith Randolph battled, like he was hurting at Minnesota, but he made some impact plays. I think Denzel Daxon's played some of his best ball, and Seth Coleman's coming alive a little bit, and so is Gabe Akers. I know he played outside linebacker again last week, but those guys are playing a little bit better the last couple of weeks. So Indiana's offensive line still has issues, especially on the right side. Their right side of the offensive line has issues. So that's what gives me confidence, is those guys are playing ridiculous ball. Their run defense the last few weeks has been really, really good. So I think that defensive front, and most notably number 4, is the reason for confidence.
Yeah, I could say the offensive line, because I think that's played better. I was kind of along those lines. The running game, I think, especially if you're going in there with a backup quarterback, if that's how this thing plays out, to have Caden Fagan coming into his own, to have that offensive line run blocking in the way that they are, the fashion that they are. I asked Josh Kreutz about it. Every offensive lineman wants to run block. I mean, you're very storied football career, Jeremy. I'm sure you enjoyed a good run blocking yourself.
Yeah, when you can fill your britches with 185 pounds at 5'9". Yeah, run blocking is your thing. Cut blocking is my thing.
But I think the way that Illinois needs to run the ball. I've said this every week on here. They need to run the ball to be successful. And they need to do that, especially if you go in with the backup. And they have. And then you add Reggie Love back into that mix. I think you can control this thing. If in theory, you can control this thing, play it at your own tempo, do what you want to do, and ride your 250-pound running back as far as he'll take you.
Yeah, I have this stat in my previewing pick, so I'll put it out here now. With Caden Fagan as your main running back, your last 3 games, your average third down distance against Power 5 opponents, 4.8 against Maryland, 5.0 against Wisconsin, 5.8 against Minnesota. The 4 games prior to that, Kansas, 9.9 yards, average third down distance, just teeing off on Luke Altmyer. Penn State, 10.4 yards. 10.4. They lost yardage on these third downs. Purdue, 8.6. Nebraska, 6.5. He's just made them manageable third downs. Like, he is just getting positive yards. Like, there were times, Minnesota, I didn't think the offensive line had a great day. The 2 previous games, Maryland, Wisconsin, I thought the offensive line played really well. Fagan just outran and plowed through some bad blocking at times and got you into 2nd and 8 instead of being 2nd and 12, or got you into 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 10. So he's made a huge impact of just giving you that physical identity and giving Altmyer a chance. And now if Altmyer can't go, they're going to need that to give John Paddock a chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's made Barry Lundy's job just so much easier.
It has, and those guys believe in Caden Fagan.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaiah Williams glowed about him. I don't think there's any doubt that the offense feels like if you put Isaiah Adams said it way back at, oh gosh, Jeremy, where were we at for that? What game was that? Get the ball to 3.
Purdue?
That was the Purdue game. I mean, they believed in this kid for a while.
You can see it. They can see it. Like, I don't want to tackle that guy. I see him plowing through people. Like, you just he's built different. Like, when you got dudes like that, it's like watching Regis Ben or Rashard Mendenhall back in the day. Like, I don't know if he's gonna be a top 50 pick or whatever, but it's just those guys are ridiculously talented and physically good, and he's gotten better every week. His vision's gotten better, his blocking's gotten better, and you've seen that explosiveness on a couple of these touchdowns.
Yeah, I called him deceptively fast today. I think Brett Bielema liked the term deceptive.
You got to appreciate the question, but
my first one. If Brett is just a fun aside, if Brett Bielema says he appreciates the question, I'm not sure that he appreciates the question.
It's his way of saying dumb question.
Yes, I will wear that. But look, I think 250 pounds, the way he ran, especially on that catch and run, deceptively fast. He can move, and I remember him coming up.
He deceived Tyler Newman on that run.
Yes, he sure did. I remember him coming up in high school, and I know it's a totally different bear, but like the thought of him was, yeah, this kid's really like he wasn't as monstrous as he is now, but he was still a big guy. But it's like he's also really fast. Like he's a fast kid, and I just don't think you see it because a lot of his yards have been those 3 through 6 yard pickups, and occasionally you see him break out of there. And probably not the breakaway Chase Brown speed, right? But he's got enough speed to complement that huge frame.
By the way, Bielema also did not like our nickname attempts.
No, oh God, no.
He did not approve. He did the law firm, which you could do with any kind of English sounding names. But it's like, where's your idea, Brett? Right? Like,
so
I put out because he mentioned Anthony Thomas, right? And kind of comparing him to Caden Fagan. He mentioned Anthony Thomas. So in one of my stories, I just put the K trains gaining steam, and I was just like throwing it out there. I didn't care. You had the Arthur Wagner, which I like, but Bielema did point out he's from Atwood, but it just doesn't work when you say.
I mean, I asked Caden, I was like, "Well, you are from Atwood, but there aren't really as many buggies in Atwood." I think it's still workable, but I'm willing to move on from it. I'd rather not.
Far more creative than mine. Like I just went K train.
Thank you. I get a little credit here and there.
I like it, but apparently it did not fly.
Well, it's a work in progress. I'm not ready to retire that one yet. Yeah. First NIL deal that comes in, Brett's going to go up there and scream Arthur Wagner in front of every microphone. So.
This episode of the Illini Inquirer Podcast is presented by Underdog Sports. We see a lot of you are downloading Underdog Sports, using the promo code, and having fun, which we love to see. If you haven't already checked out Underdog Sports, be sure to do so. It's super easy to use. You go on the app, go pick whether favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total than what is listed. For example, Travis Kelce, he's very popular these days. If his number is set at 50 receiving yards and you know Taylor Swift is in the house, you may feel confident he's going to go way higher than the number. Do that with 2 to 5 different players and you're in business. If you go 5 for 5, you can 20x your money. So sign up today with promo code Illini and get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code Illini to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. There are a lot of fantasy companies out there, but we decided to partner with Underdog because it's the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. You must be 18 or older and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Number 5, biggest cause for concern against Indiana, Joey.
I don't want to keep going back to, well, if they're down to a backup quarterback. But, I mean, if they're down to a backup quarterback, that's a cause for concern. For as much as John Paddock showed you last week, and for as much as I think it's fair to think he could piece his way through a game as a starting quarterback, I do think that's fair. And I think playing Indiana and not playing an Iowa next week or Wisconsin, go down the line, like, sorry, but like that you'd rather, if John Paddock has to start, you'd probably rather be Indiana than some of the other games you've played.
There's like Luke Altmyer, the spectrum seems way wider. Like he could make some mistakes that put you down in this game. Like, I don't know if John Paddock is going to make those, but I also think Luke Altmyer, with him in the game, you have a chance to blow them out. Like, I think I respect Indiana. I don't think this was going to be a blowout. I just haven't seen that from Illinois. But if he is on his A game, if Luke Altmyer is on his A game, I think Illinois could win this by a couple touchdowns.
He was on his A game in the first half last week. He was awesome.
Sure was. And his defense wasn't very good, right? And his wide receivers didn't make plays on the ball. Like Matt Bryant dropped 3 passes or got 3 passes broken up in the end zone. That ended up, that's what, 6, 6, and 2. 14 points right there, potentially 16. So, yeah, I thought he was awesome in that first half against Minnesota. And as great as John Paddock was, like Luke Altmyer has been one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten the last 5 weeks. 10 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 76% completion rate. Sure, there's ups and downs. His ball security's got to get better. His, nitpicking of just getting rid of the ball a little bit quicker. All those things, yes, those are true, but this is a dynamic quarterback that gives Illinois an advantage in every game the rest of the season. John Paddock, I had to see it, but like Altmyer won this job for a reason. So I hate to be like the skeptical on John Paddock after what we just saw, but I think that's all legit. My concern is 50-50 balls. Casey Washington has shown he can win them. Can anybody else win them on this team? Like Pat Bryant.
No, that's not what we've seen.
That's his next step. Isaiah Williams, obviously smaller, but he's shown the ability to get open and catch the ball. Tip Ryman did a little bit, but even on defense, man, like we've seen this a couple times now where Illinois' defensive backs go win a battle. That happened a couple times against Minnesota. They win 2 50-50 balls. Great balls by Ethan Kaliak-Manis, but those wide receivers came down with the ball while Minnesota's defensive backs broke up similar passes. I want to see, some of these guys make some plays in the ball. I think Zach Toby can do it. Now the experience has to kick in. Xavier Scott, when you get the opportunity, haul those in. I need to see those guys make a big play because we're seeing some forced fumbles. We're seeing some sacks. We're seeing some pressure. That secondary now has to make some of those plays. And I think Pat Bryant's next step, and George McDonald told me this, is he's got to be able to come down with some of those balls moving forward.
Yeah, I think another, concern is you just got to get rid of those coverage busts. They had some broken coverages in that first half that really kept Minnesota in it.
Yep.
Early on when Luke Altmyer was playing really good ball. You got to clean those up. They did. They did in the second half, and I think Clayton Bush was a big part of that. And I know you talked with Clayton this week, but you got have a couple of those against Indiana with the backup, and now you're, if it is a backup, I should say, now you're kind of, less comfortable, I guess.
All right. For the last question, number 6, I thought of going a little bigger picture. Last year, Illinois had how many all Big Ten guys? It was like
so many.
11, 12, something like that. Which Illini would receive all Big Ten honors if the season ended today?
I mean, Johnny Newton, Isaiah Williams.
He's between first and second team. So I kind of want to have this go. No doubt, Johnny Newton's a unanimous all Big Ten first team. He's going to be in the discussion for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Illinois is probably going to have to win some more games. He's going to continue to have to produce to do that from the interior defensive line position. I think Cooper DeJean is going to get some of those. The Ohio State defensive end, JT Tuilamate, I can never say his name right. Chris Jenkins at Michigan's really good on one of the best defenses in the country. Insert Michigan joke here. But yeah, he's going to be in that conversation, right? And then Isaiah Williams, obviously Marvin Harrison's unanimous first teamer. And then it gets into the interesting one. Is it Igbukah from Ohio State who's missed time? Probably not at this point. Isaiah's numbers certainly work in his favor, but he doesn't have as many touchdowns, kind of the whole issue with Chase Brown last year because they weren't able to get all those touchdowns. So it's going to be really interesting to see because I got the 2022 names up here. But all right, Isaiah Williams, Marvin Harrison, Igbukah. Who else from Illinois as I get the leaders from?
Yeah, I want to put a little caveat, which isn't to overlook honorable mentions, but I think that really expands the list. We could sit here and talk for a while. So let's just cut it to first through third.
Let me hit that. I was struggling to get the page up, but Roman Wilson from Michigan is who I think 10 touchdowns, 589 yards, one of the top teams in the country. Daniel Jackson, Deion Burks. I think there's no doubt Isaiah Williams is going to be second team at the worst. I think Harrison and Wilson could potentially be the two guys in front of him. So after Isaiah Williams, who you got?
Boy, that's where it gets interesting because Keith Randolph would be a guy that you would think should be in that conversation. He's missed some time.
Yeah.
But and probably doesn't have the counting numbers that some voters would look at.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be better suited for the coaches than the.
Now, I feel like this year there's going to be a discrepancy between media and coaches poll for a couple of these guys. Like Julian Pearl has played some stretches of good football, but if you pull up PFF, he's going to be charged with, I don't know how many sacks he's at present charged with. So those, like I think Kaz Nicholson would be a guy. Oh, do it. I know what you're going to do. I'm so pumped for this.
If I had to guess a guy that's going to be another actual teamer, not just an honorable mention, I think Xavier Scott.
Oh, that's not who I thought you were going.
Surprise you.
Good.
Xavier Scott is number 3 in the Big Ten in pass breakups. He's got an interception. He's got numbers. And if anybody's watched him, that might be the issue for him. But if anybody's watched him, he's played incredibly well this year. So maybe he's a little bit of an under the radar guy. But the pass breakups are, I can tell you as a media member who votes for these, I go to PFF, you go to the numbers, based on what you've seen. But those numbers carry a lot of weight. So if he continues racking up those PBUs and he has 2 interceptions, I think he's got a legit chance. So I surprised you. Who are you thinking?
I thought you were going to say Hugh Robertson.
Oh, Hugh. I don't think
there's a lot of good punter. Like the first team punter is spoken for.
Heisman contender, right?
Yeah, but the reality is he might be an honorable mention. He's had a good season with a couple snafus. Kaz Nicholson, honorable mention type guy.
Yeah, I think Julian Pearl, Isaiah Adams will certainly get honorable mention. I know it hasn't been the season Isaiah Adams wanted, but I think people know how good he is. Julian Pearl, I think, deserves to be in that third team consideration probably. Does Dylan Rosiak get involved there?
We assume Keith is making one. Keith Randolph.
Yeah, he'll be honorable mention at the worst.
I agree. Dylan Rosiak, it's a pretty good. I mean, I think.
Can Seth Coleman get in there? Or we forget? I think Seth Coleman has a chance to. Not a lot of sack production in the Big Ten.
He's got 3. Does he have 3 sacks?
4 now, right? Because
4. He got 1 last week. Get him up 2 more in the next couple of games. That'll probably jump off the page a little bit to some voters. He could be a guy.
Yeah, he's tied for 15th in sacks in the Big Ten. The 2 kids from Purdue, Jenkins and Skirton, both have 7. Isaac's going to be in there. Danny Strigos had a good year at Minnesota, had a good game against Illinois. Joe Evans at Iowa. It's going to be difficult for him to get second or third team, but there's a path for him to get there. If he gets 3 more sacks, I think he's definitely on there.
I agree. What now? Let's pivot on this since we're talking postseason honors. Let's talk about Caden Fagan, man. Mm-hmm. Like I know you looked into it. We talked about this extensively at the airport in Minneapolis, trying to figure out what this looked like. Late push, Jeremy, for Big Ten Freshman of the Year?
Yeah, if he gets like 300 more yards, I think he'll win it. Unless Darius Taylor comes back and owns it. I do have to mention Dylan Thieneman might be the go-to guy. Like Darius Taylor was going to be All-American, freshman All-American, number 1 running back before he got hurt and has missed all this time. Still one of the leaders in the Big Ten in rushing. Again, not a huge numbers year for running backs in the Big Ten besides the kid out of Rutgers, Menengai. And Braylon Allen getting hurt. Trevian Henderson missed games. So the numbers just haven't been there. Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards have just not put up the numbers that they did last year. So Fagan, if he gets over 700 yards, gets a couple more touchdowns, gets involved in the receiving game, yeah, I think he's got the chance to go and swipe that award, just given how important he's been to this team. And given that there's like not a lot of other guys right now that are doing it. Like Sorsby, the quarterback from Indiana, might be involved now because he's a redshirt freshman. But Thieneman from Purdue probably has the numbers, but if Illinois makes a bowl game, you could argue Caden Fagan's made a bigger impact on winning, obviously.
Yeah, and the really remarkable thing is a lot of this has come with him not playing effectively in the first 4 weeks of the season. He got some snaps, but not really. He obviously became that feature back at Maryland. Dude, his season's been really good. And like he is. Like you're seeing him get better every week. It's pretty remarkable to think just how – and he said, he's like, I talked to some of the freshmen. I was in high school last year playing 2A football. Like his ability to put this all together as quickly as he had, and the opportunity. I mean, you don't want your teammates to get hurt, but that's paved the way for an opportunity for him to come in here. And we've seen freshmen not maximize, right? Like we've seen them have these opportunities. It just doesn't pay out for one way or the other. It is for him, and it is. He's a story right now of this Illinois offense.
No, absolutely. He's changed it for the better, and he'll be top 3, no doubt. Barring injury, he'll be a top 3 pick for Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and he's gaining, right? Like if he passes up Darius Taylor here soon, which I think will happen unless Taylor comes back and is healthy, I think he's got a shot at this award. All right, picks to click. You hit yours. I hit mine earlier with Tip Ryman on offense getting the touchdown, but I will cede you Isaiah Williams with his career best performance.
It was bold. It was bold to go out and pick Isaiah. I know.
Even though we had agreed, Isaiah Williams is not to be picked. But
now can we discuss the defensive pick to click if you don't mind?
I did not take Johnny Newton.
I thought you did.
No. Yeah. I missed on mine. I had Akis, remember?
Yeah. I don't remember who I had. Kanena? I had Kanena.
Yeah. Which probably better than Gabe, but I don't think either of us said it was just Johnny Newton. It was the Johnny Newton.
Yeah. Let's take – can we go back to our normal rules here?
Yes. No Johnny Newton, no Isaiah Williams. All right. Offensive pick to click against Indiana. The Illini are 6-point favorites. Joey, I'll let you go first.
Just keep it going with Caden Fagan. I think if you're down to a backup quarterback –
brave of you.
I can't wait to hear your out on a limb pick. This is going to be a blast to hear who you go with. I'm so mad at you. Look, if you're down to a backup quarterback, Caden Fagan's a guy who you've seen can carry this thing, can just be that that stabilizer to put John Paddock in manageable situations on third down, short yardage situations. I like what you've seen out of him. I really, really like what you've seen out of the offensive line as run blockers. I think that they are finding it. Look, the way that line has bounced back after a truly bad start and taken a lot of fair criticisms. Bart Miller has. Virtually everyone from left to right has. Maybe not as much Julian Pearl. They bounced back in a really meaningful way, and it's no coincidence that, yes, Caden Fagan helped. And getting those yards, those positive yardage runs. His first run for a loss was last week. It's like 70-some-odd carries. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. But that helps. Those guys are really – they're doing a heck of a job up there, at least as run blockers.
So you need at least 80 yards and a touchdown, right, to win.
Sean, I'll take that. That's this whole rant I'm going on. You're just trying to doing your numbers calculation. That's fine. I lost myself halfway through anyway.
I will go. I mentioned him not making some plays last week when he had the opportunity, even though he had a good game. Pat Bryant, I think you're going to need a lot of one-on-one coverage. I think Indiana, if Luke Altmyer can't go, is going to load that box and try to stop Caden Fagan. That could open up the RPO game, and I think that's where Pat Bryant can really shine. Is on those slants, catch him. Got some yak last week that I love seeing on some of the RPOs. So I'll go Pat Bryant with a big game if Luke Altmyer is not able to go. Defensive pick to click. Joey, I'm going to go first. I've been mentioning him all this podcast. I think he's had a really good season, and I think it's time for him to make a big game-changing play. I'm going to go Xavier Scott in that nickel position, making a play on Sorsby that can help change the game. I think him and Taz Nicholson have been really solid, and Scott's had a really good season. I mean, just for sophomore, like he's a foundational piece for them in that secondary.
Yeah, he's everything that this coaching staff kind of told us he would be in the offseason. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Seth Coleman. I'm going to play the Johnny Newton effect a little bit. I'm going to go with Seth Coleman because I think you're starting to see those two play off of each other well. The coaching staff be able to play those two together well. Let Seth Coleman maximize the ridiculous amount of attention Johnny Newton gets. And I think you can go back. I might be able to get a sack and move his way into that all Big Ten discussion.
All right. Anything else to add, Joey, before we go?
No, it's supposed to be kind of 50 degrees on Saturday, give or take, 11 a.m.
Start to November. You think of last year, Michigan State was like 50-mile-an-hour winds. Wasn't Purdue something similar?
Yeah, Michigan, terrible for us in the press box. Brett Behrens is going to hear this. He's so mad, our friend at WCIA.
Oh, for the fans.
Yeah. It has been a good November. 11 a.m. We love 11 a.m. home games.
Love it. Got to figure out what Iowa is. 2:30.
Yeah, we say 2:30 so we can just work harder that weekend by covering basketball the night before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting crazy.
Like we're hoping to work harder, I guess, is what 2:30 is. Otherwise, 11 o'clock, we're going to Iowa City.
Usually after these weekends covering football games, you have like a day where you got, all right, I get to this day and I can just kind of take it easy a little bit. That has not happened with basketball and signing day and all this stuff going on. But it beats a normal job, Joey. But no days off. No days off.
No days off, but I'm going to write a notebook and play a lot of video games today.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, man.